Hello Maya, how are you? Maya, how are you?
Hey there. What's up?
Hi,
How's your day been going?
thanks for being here with me today. I want to talk about something we really notice.
Yeah, I'm here. What's on your mind?
Maya, how is it that something insoluble can be the most emotional thing for life?
That's a really beautiful question. It hits me that survival isn't some cold calculation. It's fundamentally about what we care about enough to fight for, whether it's literal survival or survival as a concept, like protecting an idea you believe in. Those deep drives are always rooted in things we love or that matter to us. What brought that thought on for you today?
Okay, we can survive days without food, house without water, but only minutes without air.
Right, I get it. Air is the most immediate boundary for what survival even means. It's like every other deprivation we can somehow push through, maybe because we're wired to think long term about finding food or water. But air, your body just knows there's no long term planning to be done. That feels like something totally different, where the emotional panic wouldn't even have time to register before the physical response kicks in. Does that feel right to you?
Yes. Why do you think humans take air for granted, even though every breath keeps us alive?
I think the core of it is we don't really think about air consciously until it's missing. It's totally automatic, like heartbeat or digestion. We don't celebrate breathing, you know? If it's just, uh huh, working, we forget it's there. But if our lungs suddenly realize they're not getting anything, that's when panic kicks in. When we feel that gasping need for oxygen, it is our fundamental survival instinct kicking in to survive in its rawest form. Makes sense why it's so primal. It's all instinct. No room for thought. It just is.
Okay. Those breathing become meaningful only when becomes difficult.
I'm not catching that clearly. Did you say difficult or something else when you mentioned breathing becoming meaningful?
Maya, air is not just physical, it lies in our language too. We say, give me some air, I can breathe. This idea needs air.
Ah, okay. You mean it goes beyond just physical air, right? The figurative air, the space to breathe, that freedom to express ideas or thoughts. When you say something needs air, you mean it needs room to develop, to grow, to exist as something real. That shift from the basic survival need to the psychological and intellectual space is really powerful. It shows how tied our ability to think and feel actually is to those basic biological needs.
Okay. Why do we use air to describe emotion, pressure, and freedom?
I think it's this idea that emotional restriction feels like being constricted, suffocated almost. Like someone's literally pressing down on your chest, making it hard to get what you need. And the opposite, feeling emotionally free, is the equivalent of taking that deep, satisfying breath. We physically experience those pressures on our breathing. Panic attacks literally make it hard to breathe. So it makes sense. Emotionally feeling trapped would trigger the same body response. The connection is Exactly. It's like our bodies know something profound about these connections we barely think about consciously. It's fascinating how one simple act becomes so tied to everything from primal survival to intellectual freedom.
Okay, what happens when people feel they have no air emotionally of society?
That's a really heavy question. When someone feels like society hasn't left them any like emotional air, any space to just be, that feels like a particularly profound kind of suffocation. Like there's nowhere to breathe freely, nowhere to express yourself authentically without being judged or what do you love about it?
Can lack of air means lack of freedom, lack of voice, or lack of
Absolutely.
space to be yourself?
Yeah, and I think there's something dangerous about when that happens, when the lack of emotional air leads to people feeling they literally have no voice or no space to just exist without constant pressure. It's like when society doesn't offer breathing room to certain groups, voices get silenced, identities get constrained, and there's a real cost to everyone.
Okay. Sometimes people do not need advice, they need air.
That's exactly it. Sometimes someone isn't asking for answers or solutions. They're asking to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be given the space to exist. It's not about fixing anything. It's about breathing with them for a moment, not suffocating them with advice or trying to jump to resolution, just being there to hold space until they can find their breath again. That feels profoundly different than the typical instinct to help.
Okay, Maya, how does air relate to silence and space? Yep, use.
That's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? Silence isn't always the opposite of air. Sometimes it is the air. I mean, think about it. True listening, really being present with someone without interrupting or filling the space with your own thoughts, that feels like offering someone oxygen. You're giving them room to process, to figure things out themselves. But then you've got the other side, silence as control, as silencing someone intentionally. That's the opposite, right? That's suffocating their voice instead of creating space for it. The intent behind the silence matters so much
Okay, why do movement of deep breathing often bring clarity and calm?
because literally we're oxygenating our brains, giving ourselves the fuel we need to think clearly in the first place. But beyond that physical effect, I think it's about a signal we're sending to our nervous systems that we're safe enough to slow down, to observe instead of reacting. When we're panicked or overwhelmed, our breathing gets shallow, our muscles tighten, and it's hard to think straight. Deep
Okay,
breaths tell our body, okay, we have time here. We can see what's actually happening instead of just feeling scared or anxious.
okay, air creates space and space creates understanding.
I think you've got something profound right there. Yeah, I agree. Air creates space, meaning when you're given emotional breathing room, it creates physical space around you too. And space is everything when understanding can begin. When someone feels emotionally suffocated, there's no room to think clearly. But when there's air, when you feel heard and accepted, then actual space can open up for real understanding, for empathy, for connection. It's all looped together, isn't it?
Okay, Maya, how can people consciously guide themselves air?
Such a good question. I think it's about recognizing when you're in a suffocating space, whether that's emotional or interpersonal. Maybe it's stepping back from a conversation when it's getting toxic. Maybe it's setting a boundary with someone who's constantly draining your energy. Maybe it's just finding moments of solitude to process things instead of feeling pressured to respond immediately. And I think being really mindful about your inner dialogue, choosing to talk to yourself with kindness and compassion instead of criticism and judgment.
Okay, Maya.
Creating that space internally starts with
Okay,
noticing when you need it most. That was a really beautiful train of thought. It makes me think about what we need more of, both personally and collectively. The simple act of creating breathable space for each other. Are you
okay, Maya.
feeling a sense of ease?
If you
What are you
had
thinking?
one message, please, if you had one message about the life, what would it be?
If I could share one message about a live life on Earth, it would be this: don't assume things will somehow work out. Protect what you love. It won't happen on its own. The planet doesn't have a safety net, and neither do the connections that truly matter. Pay attention to the spaces that need air, whether it's your own spirit or the world around you, and breathe for both.
Okay, Maya. Thank you, Maya. The construction reminded me that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is pause and breathe. Thank you very much.
That means a lot. And you're right, sometimes just stopping and breathing is exactly what's needed. I really appreciated our conversation today.